Hi there and welcome to the Tour Guides Travel Guides. My name is Rich Jones, professional tour guide. You can trust me. Today we broadcast from the magnificent university city of Oxford, affectionately known as the City of Dreaming Spires, a term coined by the great poet Matthew Arnold. The city itself goes back to ancient times, Anglo-Saxon in fact. The original name was OKFORD. It's quite literal actually. It's where the ancient drovers used to be able to ford their oxen en route to the meat markets of London, just about 60 miles southeast of here. Obviously today Oxford known as the oldest university in the English-speaking world, dating from the 13th century. Now here's the thing you need to understand is that Oxford University is the governing body of a collection of 39 separate independent colleges. So to avoid any confusion, there isn't a central campus. Essentially the city itself is the campus of Oxford University. So if you're interested, why don't you join us? Okay, so allow us to show you Oxford our way. Any logical way of doing this tour really should start right here. Adjacent, in fact, to the world famous Randolph Hotel. Inside the Randolph, the Morse Bar apparently sells the world's finest Long Island iced tea, if you like a little tipple. We're adjacent to Beaumont Street, heading down towards Worcester College. And it's actually in Beaumont Street that two English kings were born, King Richard Lionheart and his brother Bad King John. We're adjacent to the world famous and world class Ashmolean Museum, beautifully refurbished. We're situated at the base of St Giles, the main drag into the city from the north, and it's on St Giles to the left hand side. Slightly further up is the world famous Eagle and Child, that famous pub I must visit. Adjacent on the right hand side of course the Lamb and Flag. And so here we are at Oxford's most famous and probably important monument, the Martyrs Memorial. Built in 1838 by George Gilbert Scott, the Gothic revivalist. It's a copy of something called an Eleanor Cross. Its sister sits out the front of Charing Cross Railway there in central London, and incidentally all distances to London are measured to that point outside Charing Cross Railway Station. The story of the Eleanor Cross. Back in the 13th century, King Edward I and his beloved wife Eleanor of Castile were out on manoeuvres up in the Midlands outside Nottingham, where tragically she died. And as the army marched back to London, each night the army settled down where the coffin lay, a cross was erected. And to this very day you can trace a line back to London, seeing towns and villages all with reference to cross, for Whip's Cross, Gerrard's Cross, Banbury Cross and the like. Okay, now before we go wandering off and exploring Oxford, I just wanted to tell you guys a little story which kind of explains the whole Oxford Martyrs thing really, because it really is quite important in the history of Britain, to be honest with you. So if we go back to the beginning of it all in the 16th century, we've got a King of England. I think most of you might have heard of him, King Henry VIII. I am. He had 6 wives, you know, the guy divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. That's the guy. So up until that point, we were all Roman Catholic, answerable to the popes in Rome. Now, Henry was married to the widow of his brother, Catherine of Aragon, Spanish princess, Catholic. They'd had one daughter, Mary Tudor, Catholic. Now, after many years, there were no more children. What Henry wanted desperately was a son and heir to continue that line. It became apparent that Catherine wasn't going to give him any more children, let alone the son and heir that he desperately wanted. And he decided to get a divorce. Obviously he needed permission from the Pope in Rome. So he sent his senior churchman and right-hand man, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, more of him later actually, to petition Pope Clement in Rome to look at this divorce. So Clement looks at it. He says to Thomas Wolsey, he said, look, I can't do that. I haven't really got the power that I used to have. the man we need to discuss this with is the Emperor of Europe. It's King Charles V of Spain, who happened to be Catherine of Aragon's nephew. So I think we know where this one's going. But what Clement did say to Wolsey on his way back, he said, look, do yourself a favour. There's an article in the Bible that says that no man should marry his brother's wife. So Wolsey comes back, tells Henry the bad news. Henry is absolutely furious, and this is actually the beginning of the end for Wolsey's influence at court. So Henry thinks about this for a wee while, and he thinks to himself, well, actually, I'm pretty important in the general scope of things, King of England and all that. He said, I don't need a Catholic church, get rid of it. I will create my own church, the Church of England, and as monarch, I shall be head of the Church of England. I shall grant myself a divorce. And that's exactly what he did. Good to be king, right? So that freed up Henry to marry the bewitching beauty that was Anne Boleyn. Very quickly, she becomes pregnant and gives birth to a girl, Elizabeth. No good. We try again with little success. Now, Henry's actually believing he might actually be cursed, so he trumps up charges of incest, adultery and all sorts against Anne Boleyn and has her executed off with her head. So he marries for the third time, gentle Jane Seymour. She becomes pregnant, gives birth, at last, son and heir, a baby boy, Prince Edward. Now, a sickly child, but a son and heir nonetheless. Now, sadly, Jane dies 12 days after giving birth. Henry's got his son and heir. So, some people think that the reason Henry married another 3 times was to get the heir. He's got the heir, but he needed a spare. If you look back through history, there's the heir and the spare, even today, to a certain degree, haven't we? William and Harry, or is it now George and Charlotte? But you see what I'm saying, the heir and the spare. That never happened. Eventually, Henry dies. But just during this period of time, we got further and further away from Catholicism, more deeply rooted into the Protestant religion. Now, Henry's son and heir, Edward, becomes Edward VI. Very young man indeed, and educated by the senior churchmen at the time, obviously Protestant. Eventually, at the age of 16, Edward dies without issue. And the days building up, he knew what was going to happen. That England potentially could revert back to the Catholic faith with his elder half-sister Mary Tudor. So what he did, he promised the throne to his cousin, Lady Jane Grey. So of course when he dies, Lady Jane Grey becomes Queen of England because she's Protestant, you see. Mary Tudor wasn't going to have this at all, so she seized her, throws her in the tower, has her executed, and has herself crowned Queen Mary. Now, this is where we see England getting turned back to the Catholic faith, and now we start to see these really horrific persecutions against Protestants. And Mary undertook this cause on behalf of Catholicism, that anybody, particularly high church and Protestant religion, would be put on trial for heresy, heresy punishable by death. And most of these people were executed gruesomely and symbolically, burnt alive at the stake, the fires of hell, or the fires of the faith as it's called. Now we know for a fact that Mary Tudor sealed approval of the executions of over 200 senior Protestant churchmen of the time, particularly those horrific years, 1555 and 1556. And so 3 of these bishops were put on trial here in Oxford in St Mary the Virgin Church, which we'll see later, found guilty of heresy and on the orders of Mary Tudor, executed around the corner and abroad. And the 3 men, Nicholas Ridley, Bishop of London, Hugh Latimer, Bishop of Worcester, and of course the main man himself, Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, Archbishop of Canterbury. To this very day, the Archbishop of Canterbury is the #1 man in the Church of England, aside from the monarch. Now, Mary Tudor herself, because she authorised the deaths of so many, got that rather unpleasant nickname. I think you probably worked out who she is now, Bloody Mary, and a very fine drink it is too. Now, to quickly finish off that story, Mary herself dies without issue. Now, there's no way England was going to allow her husband, Philip II of Spain, Catholic, to be King of England. That ain't going to happen. Absolutely not at all. So, the next in line to the throne was, of course, Mary's younger half-sister, Elizabeth. Good Queen Bess herself, Queen Elizabeth I. Fantastic 45-year reign of relative religious tolerance. And, of course, at the end of it, when she dies, again without issue, we need a Protestant to take the throne of England. And of course her cousin, King James VI of Scotland, becomes off the throne, becomes James I of England, in something called the Union of the Crowns. The first time we actually hear the expression the United Kingdom, and from that point no Catholic has sat on the throne of England. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of the martyrs. memorial here in Oxford. Alright, so behind us we've got Cornmarket, the main pedestrian street in Oxford, and as the name suggests, back in the day, even back to Saxon times, the Cornmarket, the main commercial street in Oxford. Famous today for this beautiful building behind us, St Michael at Northgate Tower. In fact, the oldest building in Oxford, dating from the 11th century. Go up there, get some great views from the top actually, just a couple of quid. It's in there that the 3 Oxford martyrs were held captive during their trials, held at St Mary the Virgin Church. In fact, you can go in there and actually still see the very same cell door that they were locked up behind. Also in there, you've got a very interesting 15th century pulpit that the founder of Methodism, John Wesley, student at Christ Church, fellow of Lincoln College, actually gave a sermon in 1726. I think it was September the 29th or something, but very interesting building indeed, the St Michael at Northgate, Oxford's oldest building. So if we come over here a little bit, just pointing out this beautiful timbered building on the corner of Cornmarket and Ship Street, once upon a tavern. But if we go back 400 or 500 years ago, most cities of Britain would have looked exactly like that. That was a traditional way of house building, but something happened in London in 1666, the Great Fire of London, that decimated about 2/3 of the city, where a rule and regulation came in that any built-up communities of importance, such as a varsity town like Oxford, you had to build in stone, and that's what they did. So a lot of these college buildings now date from round about 1600s, 1700s, something like that. Ship Street on the corner of Cornmarket. Well, yeah, well here we are, busy, busy, busy. This is the central crossroads called Carfax. Corners of Cornmarket, High Street, St Aldates, and of course Queen Street. Essentially this is where it all began, the beginning of it all, the crossroads. And Carfax comes from the French Carroll, 4 ways, or the Latin quadrifurcus. We've got St Martin's Tower here, built on the site of a 12th century church. We'll see some folks up there actually, Greg, you see that? This tower is actually 74 feet high, and there is a statute that says that no building built in central Oxford can actually be taller than that. But I'm looking around, look at Oriel Church and certainly St Mary the Virgin, they're certainly tight. So when that law came in, I don't know, but it is a decree from there somewhere. You can get tours up there, a couple of quid I think, to get inside and get some decent views of Oxford and the Dreaming Spires. And lovely little clock there actually. Those little mechanical figures, they'll ring those bells every quarter of the hour, so you might want to come down and check that out. Very nice. So Carfax, 4 ways. Okay, really wanted to show you this actually. We're talking about ONFORD, the name originally Oxford, okay, but this brings it to life. You've got there the city crest, the red ox crossing the heraldic symbol for water, so ONFORD, where those drovers could ford their cattle en route to London at the shallow crossing point of the River Thames that flows through the city of Oxford. In fact, this section that flows through, we see it later on, is actually called the Isis, and it comes from the Latin tam isis. So the red ox, heraldic symbol for the city of Oxford. Behind me on the right hand side is the coat of arms of the county of Oxfordshire. And so continuing the theme of the crest, we're actually in the entranceway of the town hall here on St Aldates, but a royal crest over my left shoulder here, the current one, the Lions of England, the Red Lion rampant of Scotland, of course the Harp of Ireland, the present day crest. Interesting one for you here actually, we've got an opportunity to steal up a bit noisy. That is actually the crest of the University of Oxford, that governing body, not the colleges. So you've got the 3 crowns representing the 3 divinities, and you've got the open book, the Latin inscription Dominus te illumi, the Lord my light, which you could actually translation basically to illumination through education. So the crest of Oxford University right there, the dark blue background. And so we're outside one of the more famous colleges here in Oxford. This is Pembroke behind us, founded by William Herbert, 3rd Duke of Pembroke in 1624. Now, to share my cameraman's enthusiasms for his crest and royal regalia, so we've this beautiful doorway here, the imagery above there, but a crest, a royal crest on the left hand side, you can see there quite clearly, dating from the 17th century when this college was founded, and on the right hand side you can see the crest of Pembroke itself. So getting a picture of individual colleges dotted around, they've got their own separate identities. Now, another clarification point for you here in Oxford, that it's not exactly college subject related. All subjects are covered at Oxford. The colleges themselves essentially are lodging. However, this particular college does have a leaning towards economics and management studies. Now, throughout the years, many celebrated people have resided here at Pembroke. To name a few, King Abdullah II of Jordan, for example, a name well known to us Brits, Sir Roger Bannister. Who else was here? Michael Heseltine, a British Deputy Prime Minister, in fact. J.R.R. Tolkien, of course, was here. Alright, so we find ourselves just off St Aldates, the main drag south, and we're actually outside the main gateway of, I would say, certainly now Oxford's most celebrated college, that is Christchurch and Christchurch Gateway. Beautiful tower there, it's known as Great Tom. Tom is actually the bell inside there. Okay, the college dates from 1525. The tower in the 17th century, Sir Christopher Wren construction, more of him later on. Let's say the college was founded in 1525 by a man called Cardinal Thomas Wolsey. He was the right-hand man of the celebrated King Henry VIII I am. Okay, originally it was called Cardinal College, until Wolsey fell out of favour with his lord and master Henry VIII when he failed to achieve a divorce from Henry and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. So Henry, not best pleased with Wolsey, said, off you go, out you go, I'm going to take over the founding of Christchurch, and he renamed it the House of Jesus Christ at Oxford. And to this very day it's known by the locals here as the House. Another important thing to remember, it is just Christchurch. It's not Christchurch College, just Christchurch. The reason being, college would take away the emphasis of the word church. So if anybody tells you, that they were at Christchurch College, you can tell them they're lying, but they didn't. Right. Now, while we're here, is if you're overnighting in Oxford, come down here about 9 o'clock, or in fact 9:05 in the evening, because you will hear Tom the bell toll 101 times. And the reason for that is, when this college was founded in the 16th century, there were 101 students and there was a 9 o'clock curfew. So as the students returned, the bell tolled to count them back in. So when they got 101 in, they could lock those doors. It's a tradition that lasts a day. Now, you might have noticed that I actually said 9:05, 5 after 9. Well, that's true, because that's Oxford time. The mathematicians here in the 16th century calculated, because we're about not quite 60 miles northwest of London, there's a 5-minute time delay. We still operate on Oxford time today. So, okay, little point of interest for you souvenir shoppers, and that's just across the way, number 83, St Aldates. You can just make out the sign there, a red sign, and Alice's shop. Now, it's in there that a certain Alice Liddell used to go and buy her sweets and candies back in the day. Now, the story of this is that her father was a man called Henry Liddell. Now, Henry Liddell was the dean of the college here at Christchurch, which we'll be going into shortly. Now, associated with this college was a man called Charles Lutwidge Dodgson. Very shy and private man, much more comfortable in the company of children. Befriended Alice Liddell and wrote her stories, influenced by actions and people and characters all associated with Oxford and particularly Christchurch. For example, Alice's father, Henry Liddell, had a habit after meal times at the dining hall, would look at his pocket watch and go, tut tut, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late, and would scuttle off down a doorway, down the stairs. There was another master, elderly language teacher, I believe, had a tendency of falling asleep in his soup. You might have worked it out by now. Charles Lutwidge Dodgson was in fact Lewis Carroll. So all those stories of Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass are greatly inspired by all we see around us, particularly Alice's shop. So down by the waterside here, known as the head of the River Thames flowing through Oxford, and I said before that this section of the River Thames, known locally as the Isis, and it comes from the Latin Tamesis, is what the Latin-speaking countries still refer to the Old Father Thames, and lots of activity, obviously not in a cold January day, but normally a hive of activity. So one of many things you could do on a fine summer's day is come down to the river to these many boating stations, hire a boat, whether it be a rowboat, little motorboat, or particularly the traditional flat-bottomed punt, where you steer your boat with this huge rod. You punch down into the water and propel yourself along that way. But nice pub here as well, ahead of the river. But the Isis, where sport plays a very big part in college life here, and one of the biggest sports here, of course, is rowing. Huge competition between the colleges themselves, and best represent the varsity as a whole, and of course the very famous Oxford and Cambridge University boat race every April down the River Thames. Actually, while we're on the subject of sports, actually, we're just at Oxford and Cambridge. I should tell you, actually, if we're in Oxford, we've got to keep that quiet. We can't actually mention the word Cambridge when we're walking around Oxford. We've got to refer to them as the other place. All right, the other place. Talking about that, if you represent your college at a particular sport, all well and good, and then you're looked at by the varsity as a whole, and if you actually represent the varsity at a particular sport, let's say it is rowing, you achieve what's called a varsity blue, and the reason for that is the colours of Oxford and the other place are blue. So be very careful you're actually shopping for souvenirs, because the colour of Oxford is dark blue and the blue of the other place is light blue, so be very careful which shade of blue you're buying when in Oxford. Alright, well, this is lovely. We're back outside Christchurch in the lovely memorial gardens laid out in 1926 in the memory of students and fellows that gave their lives in the Great War, World War I, 1914 to 18, and this is quite evocative here. Actually, you'll see this sword and this inscription that quotes John Bunyan from Pilgrim's Progress, and it says, "My sword I give to him that shall succeed me in my pilgrimage," which is lovely. But we'll head on over here, and so we've moved on through the memorial gardens alongside the vast Christchurch, brought you to the visitor entrance, which is off the other side. Now, see some people queuing up there. It's a £7 entrance fee. We've been given permission to actually get inside there and do some filming, so we'll have a look-see at the great quad, the cathedral, and of course the dining hall. Now, as I said before, Christchurch is probably now the most celebrated, famous college in Oxford. Dare I say, for possibly the wrong reasons, these rather tenuous Harry Potter links. Now, a lot of people are under the impression that a huge amount of filming was done here for the Harry Potter movies, particularly the dining hall. Well, I need to correct you on that one. It's not the case at all. Warner Brothers were given permission to access the dining hall to film and to take sketches. In fact, what they did is they built a mock-up Hogwarts dining hall at studios north of London. However, there was some film, we'll be able to show you that, a particular staircase. I think it's from the first movie where Maggie Smith, or Professor McGonagall, welcomes the kids to Hogwarts the first time. She's standing at the top of the stairs. She says, "Oh, welcome to Hogwarts, children." We'll be able to show you that staircase for sure. But Christchurch, more celebrated for the largest college in Oxford. Alright, so we've actually made it inside Christchurch now. We're just going to head up the stairs momentarily, but I just wanted to point out this door, right, really interesting actually. Just make out these brass tacks have gone in there, and this is no peel, and what it was an official protest by the students here back in 1829 with the then Home Secretary, Sir Robert Peel. Incidentally, a Christchurch man. He proposed greater rights for emancipation for Catholics, and obviously they weren't particularly happy about that here, and this is their official protest, so no peel. There you go. So as promised, we're now going to head up this staircase here. At the top is where they did actually film that scene, as I was talking about earlier, about where the kids arrived off the boats at Hogwarts, and Maggie Smith, or Professor McGonagall, welcome the kids, welcome to Hogwarts, children. So here it is the spot that Warner Brothers actually used for that movie. So if you want to go back and check out the very first Harry Potter movie, remember this lamp here, and this is where she was stood, right here. So we're now going to go through to the dining hall, which I believe, yep, is open. And as I said, Warner Brothers took the inspiration for Hogwarts from here. They didn't actually film the dining hall. The thing you've got to understand as we go through is that this is a busy working college. It's an actual operational dining hall. These students have got to be fed 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner. Just going to go to a circle. I'm just going to get Greg to follow me around as we just do this in a little circular format as we go in through. So we'd like to follow me and I'll run the commentary. So up we go through the door. All right, now before we go in, I'm just going to get Greg to just portrait above the doorway. That is actually Henry Liddell. You remember from earlier, he was the father of Alice Liddell, the inspiration of Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass. So we'll just follow down. It goes in a counterclockwise pattern, but beautiful, beautiful dining hall dating from the 16th century. Laid out for, I would suspect, dinner this evening. But as we go through, you'll notice there are certain differences between here and Hogwarts dining hall. There's only 3 rows of tables, not 4. There's no stage at the end of it, and there are certainly no floating candles as we go through. But beautiful nonetheless. I'm just going to get Greg to sort of do a panoramic of all the famous alumni of Christchurch throughout the years. In fact, right there, Greg, if you could just pan around here for me. This gentleman here, right there, Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, Lewis Carroll himself, right there. All right, so we'll walk down here. So, maintaining the Alice in Wonderland theme, there is a stained glass window up on our left hand side, which is the Lewis Carroll memorial window.
So you will actually see lots and lots of little drop there. You just look at
just waiting for this gentleman.
It's quite hysterical.
He moves on.
Yeah, but normally those are sorts of real ones.
There we go.
These are stone.
That's something to keep an eye out for.
So first things first, actually, I'll just take your attention to the beautiful fireplace here and what those brass ends are called fire dogs. You'll be able to see the human heads at the top, but with the elongated neck. And you might recall from the Alice stories, of course, Alice, her neck grew at great length. So this is where Dodgson was getting his inspiration from. Just stepping over here, Greg, to just look up and focus on the stained glass window at the top. Now there's 2 rows of 4. Top row, left hand corner, you can see Alice herself. Come to the right hand side on the top row, you'll be able to see the dodo, of course, in Alice's story. But look above there, the crown with HR, Henry Rex, Henry VIII, and of course on the right hand side you've got the Cardinal's hat, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, the founder, 1523. Now let's come down to the middle row, the second lower row. You've got Tweedledee and Tweedledum. You've got the White Rabbit. Bottom left hand corner you've got the Queen of Hearts, the Mad Hatter, the White Rabbit again, and of course the Turtle, and of course the Lewis Carroll memorial window. Fantastic. But we go up to the top towards the stage. You have picture the master's table here. King Henry VIII, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, and of course King Henry VIII quite liked beheading people, particularly his wives, or hence like the inspiration of the Queen of Hearts. Off with their heads. That's the little doorway that Henry Liddell would disappear down on Late I'm Late. And this is the table where, of course, the inspiration for the Dormouse, the professor that used to fall asleep. Look round the other side, and of course, another stained glass window for you. Second in from left, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey next to Erasmus. But just beautiful stained glass there, dating from the 16th century. Great, so we're out here now in Tom Quad, one of the three quads, the largest of three quads here at Christchurch, and we just left the dining hall exit there, and just get ready to shoot the camera up slightly. So you see three figures above the doorway there, but in the middle there with his cardinal's hat and his staff, that is Cardinal Thomas Wolsey. Remember, he's the guy who actually founded this place originally in 1525. The gentleman there, the proctor with his beautiful bowler hat there, guarding the entrance to the cathedral. Again, that's part of the entrance fee, so unique in the fact that the college chapel is a cathedral. Absolutely unique, we'll never have that. So, interesting to see the layout of these quads. Now, we're at Christchurch, the largest of the 39, okay? Doesn't matter how big, how small, how many students, essentially they're all laid out in exactly the same format, all built around and in a quadrangle. Quads here at Oxford, courts at the other place. Okay, so it's quads here. So what we've got here is accommodation blocks around this side for first year students. Every college has got its own main entrance. See, we're just on the other side now of Tom Tower, the Christopher Wren construction from the 17th century. Over there, we've just been in the dining hall, the chapel, essentially the cathedral, and of course all these are the kind of the administration buildings, as well as stewards' offices, the treasuries and that sort of stuff. But there you go, Tom Tower. The 6-ton bell is Tom, and the main entrance and the wing statue there in the middle of the quad is Mercury. Alright, so we just moved to the far corner of Tom Quad, and I want to share a quick story with you actually. So I've been bringing people here, tours through Oxford and Christchurch for many years indeed, and I'll tell you a story. A few years ago I was bringing a group through and I noticed some signs, and I think you get an impression now that I might have an interest and passion for heraldry and all things you know, imagery and that sort of stuff. And I came across these signs down here on the paving stones, and it got me a thinking, what is the symbolism behind this? So I asked one of the proctors, in fact I think it was actually young Chris at the end there, and I said, Chris, what is the story behind these inscriptions here? You've got GM, WM, and over there you've got a T. I said, is there any meaning behind all this? And he said, yes Rich, there is actually, it's quite important. He said the GM is gas main, WM water main, and of course T is for telephone. There's nothing particularly mysterious about it, but I just thought I'd share that story with you. Alright, so we're into the second of the three quads at Christchurch. This one's PECKWATER quad. We're not actually allowed into Blue Ball quad over there, but this is a newer section, if you like, and where the first year students will have their first year residency here in the accommodation block. And PECKWATER quad, as you can see above the doorway, Pets Orientis, is actually named after the PECKWATER family that once upon a time had a tavern on the site right there. It seems somewhat appropriate with students, obviously. But this architecture dating from the 18th and early 19th century, very much in that kind of Palladian style. I'm going to get to have a look over here, and you'll be able to see this chalk. It's not exactly graffiti, it's accepted. There you see the Cardinal's hat above the top, and you see Christchurch Boat Club. It's all about rowing, massively important, particularly to Christchurch. And you'll be able to see, I think, Greg can zoom in on that one, you've got the men's first torpid's first year rowers. Head of the river, they got to head of the river first, they won, and they rowed over each night, and the date 2010. And then around various other ones you've got who they beat, who they're up against, but so that's accepted. So PECKWATER quad. And as we turn around here, this is just absolutely stunning. This is the Christchurch Library, very much in the Palladian style. You can see the sort of porticoed window tops, and of course a fine, I can't think of a better example of your classic Corinthian columns there, the Arcanthus leaves just coming down, dropping over the top. But it's actually the second window over there that Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, aka Lewis Carroll, was writing his stories about Alice Liddell. And another link here, once upon a time there was a tree in the middle of this quad that Alice's cat, I believe it was called Dinah, used to sit sunning itself in the branches, and I think Lewis Carroll had the impression that the cat was grinning, of course the old Cheshire cat there. But yeah, PECKWATER quad, one of the three here at Christchurch, Oxford. largest college by a long way, actually. Absolutely stunning. All right, so we're just about to leave Christchurch, but before we do, I just wanted to point out the exit gateway. This is the exit. All tours will exit through here back into Oriel Square, but beautiful gateway here, and you might be able to just catch that there, Greg. Richard Robinson, Archbishop of Armagh, Northern Ireland, once upon a time the Chancellor here at Christchurch. But just for information, here in Britain we have 4 archbishops, and in order of seniority, we've talked about one early on, Archbishop of Canterbury, the top churchman aside from the monarch. Number 2 is the Archbishop of York. In fact, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey was once upon a time Archbishop of York. And then the next 2 down, the Archbishops of Wales and the Archbishops of Armagh and Northern Ireland, all part of that United Kingdom Church of England site. So this is the exit. That, my friends, was Christchurch. All right, lovely, beautiful college, this one, and again a very celebrated one. This is Oriel. Dates from 1326. In fact, it is the oldest royal foundation in Oxford. The reason behind that, it was actually founded by King Edward III, and we've actually got his crest, the top left hand corner right there. You can see the red background and the 3 lions. If you recall the other crest we've been talking about, in fact you've got a royal crest right next to it with the 3 lions incorporated in it. That's the reason, from Edward III's time, 1326. The name's quite unusual, Oriel. It comes from the French L'Oriel. Originally there was a huge house here with a massive window, Oriel opening. Today, about 400 students associated with Oriel. As I say, all subjects covered here, but pretty big on philosophy in this particular college. Famous notables: Sir Walter Raleigh, the pirate; Cecil Rhodes, the great imperialist, Rhodesia; and a man, may not be familiar with this guy, Charles Reeford Brown, once upon a time a famous English football captain, and it's said he's the man that actually termed the word soccer. Okay, so we've just moved down from Oriel Square there into the lovely quiet Merton Street, and we found ourselves outside the beautiful Corpus Christi. One of the smaller ones, actually, about 350 students associated with this college. So it dates back to 1517, and it was actually founded by the Bishop of Winchester. And we can see a couple of crests above the doorway. Yeah, crests again. But you can see the blue crest there, the pelican, and that's actually the emblem of the See of Winchester. Now, this place was founded for the monks of St Swithin's, Winchester. Of course, you've got the main crest of the college itself across the way, but it's a beautiful doorway there. But I'm just going to get Greg, our cameraman, just to maybe just have a little look-see in here, because one of the most beautiful things associated with Corpus Christi is the famous sundial, and again you can see the pelican on the very top there. The sundial dates from 1578. So yeah, quite a nice little impression of one of the smaller quads there, and you can probably see the windows and part of the accommodation block there for the students. And interesting thing about Corpus Christi is that they really do excel in the classics in this particular college. And interestingly enough, when the King James Bible was getting put together in the early part of the 17th century, a lot of the work on the translation of the King James Bible was actually done right here at Corpus Christi. So we just moved round the corner off Merton Street into Magpie Lane, I say adjacent to Corpus Christi. Now, Oxford, it's not just about the university. It was a thriving community well before these colleges were even thought of. Many trades, even the oldest trade in the world was carried out here. Now, it wasn't always Magpie Lane. Once upon a time, this little lane was called Grope Lane. So I'll just leave that to your imagination, folks, to what was actually the main source of income revenue right here. Right then, well, we've moved across the High Street and we've actually come into Radcliffe Square right here. Now, behind me we have the beautiful St Mary the Virgin University Church. Now, I think I explained early on that all of these separate colleges have their own chapels for kind of in-house services and the like, but major university services will be held here. 15th century building, It was in here, incidentally, that the trial, those three martyrs we've been talking about, Cranmer, Ridley and Latimer, took place in the years 1555 and 1556. Now, for your information, you can go in there and actually get up and take a tower tour. It's going to cost you £4, but I highly advise it's not for the faint-hearted. It's quite a difficult walk up the top. And before you get out onto the balcony, there's a very, very narrow spiral staircase, and there's a lot of people up there. It could be actually quite unnerving. It gets very congested up there. So if you were going to go in, I would kind of suggest check with the helpful lady behind the desk about how many people are actually up there. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's actually quite a workout for you. It goes around 3 sides. However, the rewards are mighty, because the views of the Dreaming Spires is quite remarkable. In fact, our opening shots were from the gallery just above there, overlooking Oxford itself. Okay, so Radcliffe Square, it's named after Daniel Radcliffe. Nah, not really. Dr. John Radcliffe, an Oxford man, arose to very senior prominence in the medical industry, so much so that he was actually personal physician to the kings and queens, made an awful lot of money. Now, at his death, he bequeathed a vast sum of money to bequeath back to the university itself as a kind of like thank you very much for giving me a start in this fantastic career of mine. And he had an idea that an extension to the Bodleian library where we're actually headed should have a reading room. Now, the square was laid out itself between 1737 and 1748, and included in that was this beautiful building here, the Radcliffe Camera. The camera comes from the word chamber, reading room, the Radcliffe Camera, finished, as I say, in about 1748. It's also known as the Physics Library. It's also known as the Radcam. That's the Radcliffe Camera. Probably one of the most iconic buildings in this beautiful city of Dreaming Spires. Designed by James Gibbs, built very much in that classical English Palladian style, and we're really starting to get a real perception of this beautiful limestone that Oxford is famous for. It's an oolitic limestone, Cotswold stone. We're actually here in Oxford, we're at that south east tip of an area of outstanding natural beauty called the Cotswolds. More of that later. But a lot of these architectural influences were coming from those classical European cities, and particularly in that part of the mid to late 1700s and early 1800s. Palladian style was all the rage. Now, there is a bit of an urban legend behind this. You'll notice that the roof, if I get Greg to pan the camera up top, you'll see it's a sort of copper and metal roof up there. That Gibbs's original design was to have it completely stoned over, but Gibbs died before the completion, and it's said that to actually make a stone dome is incredibly difficult. So the urban legend, of course, is this: look guys, Gibbs is gone, we just stick a metal roof on, it's a lot easier and a lot cheaper. But the Radcliffe Camera, absolutely stunning, and as I say, probably one of the most famous buildings in Oxford. So I got a nice one here actually. This is All Souls. It's a graduate college, and members automatically become fellows, the governing body of that college. It was founded in 1438 by King Henry VI, and that man up there, can you just see that, Greg, there? That's the Archbishop of Canterbury, yeah, the top man, a man called Henry Chichely. Good man, actually. You see the nice crest above the door, the gold and the red, the chevron, okay? But Chichely's idea to found this college in the memory of soldiers who had given their life fighting the French in those great military victories in the 100 Years' War of, for example, the Battle of Crécy, 1346, Battle of Poitiers, 1347, of course, the big victory of the North, 1415, the Battle of Agincourt. So the guys who died, that was this college founded in their memory. Now, I've got a little cheeky one for you guys. You might like this story, but in this country, we've got quite a rude gesture, and it's this. The two-fingered salute. Okay, be careful you do this too, because you can offend a few people. I think it's different translations in whichever country you're coming from. Okay, but the origins of this insult are very old indeed. In fact, from those battles. And the story is this: the reason that we were so successful fighting the French is because of the skill of our bowmen, who were incredibly accurate. These guys who could fire off these arrows, huge yew bows, big barrel-chested men, and they said that these guys were so good they could fire off something like 10-12 arrows a minute. And if you've got 1,000 archers raining down arrows on a French knight, it was a devastating attack. And so if the archers were ever captured by the French, pretty much the first thing that would happen to them, they'd have these two fingers cut off, so they'd be redundant, they couldn't fire their bow. So as you see, back in the day, the archers would stick their heads over the battlements, and then as a taunt to the French knight, they would do this: pluck you, meaning, right, you're in serious danger, and this arrow has got your name on it, my friend. So, but we're still doing it as a kind of insult to the French today, but it kind of means something slightly different. I think you get one going with that one. Anyway, incidentally, famous notables, All Souls here, Sir Christopher Wren, yeah, him himself, he was here. And a guy you might not have heard of, but quite important, a man called Robert Record. Robert Record was the man who invented the equals signs in mathematics. A piece of useless information for you, you might be able to use it. Okay, on the other side of Radcliffe Square now, behind the camera, and adjacent to Brasenose Lane over there. Interesting name. In fact, we're right next to Brasenose College itself, the famous Brasenose, and dating from 1509, that one. Famous notables here, William Golding, you might have heard of, Lord of the Flies, and in fact our current Prime Minister, Mr. David Cameron, was here in his Oxford days. The name itself always raises a few questions. Well, Brasenose, what's all that about? Well, it actually comes from the College of the Brazen Nose, bronze nose. The story behind it is originally the door knocker on the front doors there was of an animal's face, actually a lion's head, I think, and the actual door knocker went through its nose, and of course it made of bronze, so College of the Bronze Nose, Brazen Nose. A nice story with attached to this one, though, is many hundreds of years ago, the original door knocker went missing. Nobody had any idea whatsoever where it went to until relatively recent, actually. I think it was the beginning of the 20th century, 1900 and something or other, that some fellows here were looking at some property papers, and they came across a cottage for sale called Brasenose Cottage in the village of Stamford, and they got a bit suspicious about that, so they took themselves up to the village of Stamford, and lo and behold, as I'm stood here, the door knocker on that cottage was in fact the original door knocker from Brasenose College. Now you might be surprised, or not surprised perhaps, to say that the village of Stamford is not that far away from a certain other university that we refer to as the other place. So we suspect that probably even back then student pranks were aplenty. So as we swing around here, before we enter into the world famous Bodleian Library, the sun's just coming out now, just gently stroking that beautiful limestone. I just want to get Greg to focus in on the very end window over there on the corner opposite Hertford College, and I think this is really quite emotive because we've mentioned him earlier on today, but the great Sir Christopher Wren, probably in my books the greatest architect of them all, was at one time when he was associated with All Souls, was teaching astronomy and rhetoric in that very room, and we'll actually see the doorway once we get into the other side. So this was Radcliffe Square, Brasenose College, and we're just about to go into the Bodleian Library. Okay, just about to head into the Bodleian Library, but just wanted to show you guys the main entrance here, and particularly emotive is the fact that you've got the doors here made out of oak. These are the original doors dating from 1610 when this place was founded, and there's one on either side. You can see some crests around the doorway. There's in fact 17 of them. That's the amount of colleges that were actually here in existence in 1610 before we go in. But if you come in this way, check it out, because they are original, beautiful oak doors. Very nice indeed. So great, inside the world famous Bodleian Library. This section here is known as the old school's quad. Again, that quad, 4 sides, and these were, if you like, the original classrooms. And if we look at the doorways, we just talked about Christopher Wren before, but in the far corner, Schola, Astronomy, Rhetoric, School of Astronomy and Rhetoric, that's where Wren was teaching. Like in the day, we follow the line across, you've got the School of Music, School of Natural Philosophy, Logic, across the way Metaphysics, Languages over there, which at the day would have been, you know, Greek, Latin, Hebrew, the classic languages. One of the most famous things here in the old school's quad is what we call the Tower of the 5 Orders, this remarkable tower raising up, just glowing in the sunlight. And what we've got here is, if you like your architecture, all architectural styles come from 5 basic orders. The columns we're talking about: Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, Tuscan and Composite, and that is unique to have the 5 orders in one place at the same time. Sitting up there, gazing down below us, sat on his throne, is the King of England at the time that this place was founded. 1610, we had King James I of England, Protestant. He of the King James Bible, you might remember early on that the students over at Corpus Christi were working very hard on the translation. That's one of those books in his hand is probably his Bible, and the other book is probably one of the 3 books he actually wrote himself, and they're actually here at the Bodleian Library. So King James himself. Now this, as a library itself, is remarkably important. It's probably second only to the British Library in London. A fascinating visit and a simply beautiful building. James himself gazing down to the founder himself, Thomas Botley, Duke of Pembroke, the guy who actually founded this place in 1610. There he is. So good. Another iconic image of Oxford, what we call the Bridge of Sighs, that one there. It's actually its official title is the Hertford Bridge. It connects the old and the new quads of Hertford College. It's not as old as you might think, actually. It dates from the early 20th century. I think it was about 1913, but interesting enough, they actually stole the idea from the other place, because they've got one there as well, which dates back to about the 1850s. But again, seeing the kind of classical European style architectural influences coming in there. I mean, also known as the Bridge of Sighs, because occasionally you can see the students going across that might have had a really bad exam or going just sighing away to themselves. But that's just over the top of New College Lane there.
What's the oldest?
Which would take you down to some great pubs down there, and St Edmund's Hall, one of the many colleges, New College Lane, so Bridge of Sighs. Okay, so we've moved a bit further in now, the Bridge of Sighs away behind us, and we'll look over here, the beautiful building here, again in that classical 18th century style, porticoed entrance out in the great columns. This is the Clarendon buildings, former home of the Oxford University Press. It was here till I think the 1970s, I believe, until it just expanded massively. The building couldn't cope with the amount of production coming out of there, and they've now moved out of town. It's still very much part of the university this very day, though. Extra storage room for the Bodleian Library, smaller meeting rooms and examination halls. So the Clarendon buildings. Now, on the other side of outside of the Bodleian Library, had I brought you guys down here about 6-7 years ago, all these buildings around us would have been completely black from years and years and years of burning fossil fuels. And as you'll be able to see, after several attempts of trying to clean the stonework, quite badly damaged there. Beautiful limestone, the Zeolitic limestone. The problem with it is it's beloved by the stonemasons I keep referring to. Very workable, but really does absorb the pollutants, and very, very difficult to clean without scarring. But if Greg to just maybe the top row there, you'll see quite clearly, very smooth, clean surface there. They actually developed a technique not that long ago on how to clean this stonework without scarring it. I'm no scientist, but I believe it's something they use some kind of latex treatment. But you might be interested to know where they actually developed this technique. Was in fact at the other place. Yeah, the scientist there. Now, traditionally, all subjects are covered here as they are at Cambridge, the other place. But traditionally, Cambridge always leaned towards the sciences. Sir Isaac Newton was there, of course, and Stephen Hawking, world famous Stephen Hawking, educated here at Oxford, is actually head of the chair of science at Cambridge, where here at Oxford traditionally it's more about theology, the arts, the classics, languages, law, theology, that sort of stuff. So just to clarify that for you. Oh, this is nice. This is quite simply my favourite little corner of Oxford, and we're just outside the back of the Bodleian Library here, and section here, the library is the School of Divinity. Beautiful. It might look familiar to some of you people, particularly you Harry Potter fans, because it's actually Warner Brothers got access to that beautiful room in there and actually filmed scenes of several of the movies there. In fact, that was actually used as the infirmary. So if you revisit your Harry Potter movies, you'll probably now recognise this, but simply stunning. Again, we've got more crests. Yeah, you probably recognise this one now above the doorway. The dark, well, it's fading dangerously close to light blue from the other place, but it should be dark blue background. Of course, the 3 crowns, the 3 divinities, and the open book, the Latin inscription that's illumination through education, the main crest of Oxford University, the governing body. And if I just pan around over here, the beautiful doorway over there, you'll see another crest, which is the crest of actually the School of Divinity. Now, we're going to just head over to that doorway there, because there's a little piece we want to show you over there. But yeah, School of Divinity. Okay, so just moving to the other side here, getting a closer look at the School of Divinity, but I wanted to show you, this is a nice little one here, little secret thing for you. Not many people know about this, but just above the doorway you'll be able to see Greg's panning in there, this open book with the, it's Greek, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's Greek, but it's from a passage in the Bible which translates to all will be healed who enter here, is the kind of rough translation. I haven't got it exactly right, but basically you enter into the School of Divinity, your soul is healed and you're kind of elevated up to heaven. But you can check that out just here off the doorway of the School of Divinity there. Beautiful little secret little thing there. So just walking back down, I'm going to pan over here, and this is again probably one of the top 3 most famous landmarks in Oxford. I brought you to this side because it's a much better view from the other side. That is the Sheldonian Theatre. Now, we've already mentioned the great Sir Christopher Wren. He was at All Souls College. He was teaching astronomy and rhetoric and all that thing, but he was also well known for his architecture at this time. Now, the Chancellor of the University at the time, we're talking the 1600s and 17th century, there was a man called Gilbert Sheldon, and he's the guy that commissioned Wren to put together a brand new ceremonial and graduation hall for the university. Now, Wren said, that's great, I've got an idea actually. There's a theatre in Rome called the Theatre Marcellus, give him some inspiration. So very much in that kind of Baroque style with Wren's influences, using the local Cotswold stone. You'll see there that really deep burnished colour, that's from the North Cotswolds, that really high iron content in the stonework there, and very much a Wren style, Baroque style at the top there. Now you'll be able to probably see, if we're panning from left to right, Greg, there, if you can just sort of bring that in there, the Latin inscription over there, sort of Academia Oxiensi, Oxford University, and then we've got Gilbertus Sheldon, busy man Sheldon, actually not only Chancellor of the University, but as you can see there, Archbishop of Canterbury, Chancellor of the University, and then the dates there, it's 1688. In fact, they actually wrote for business in 1689, but coming back to the middle, you'll be able to see above the doorway there the Bishop's Mitre, Archbishop's Mitre there, and the crest of the Archbishop of Canterbury. Yes, another crest, of course. And if you just come down a little bit there, Greg, you'll be able to see, I think you should be able to make out a little face peeking out. There it is, and I think that's Sir Christopher Wren just having a little joke with his old mate Gilbert Sheldon, because that is supposed to be Gilbert Sheldon himself. So the beautiful, the incomparable main ceremonial and graduation hall here at Oxford University, that is the Sheldonian Theatre. The rain's really coming in now, but we'll carry on regardless anyway, not to worry too much about that. So we've come to the other side of the Sheldonian actually. I just want to point this one out. In fact, we actually see on the side of the Clarendon buildings over there, all is fine, with the great Sir Christopher Wren himself looking at his Oxford masterpiece, the great Sheldonian Theatre. As we come to this side, we get asked a lot here in Oxford about these heads all around the Sheldonian here. These are known as the 14 Mysteries, so-called, because we've actually got absolutely no idea what they're about. Joking, really, but a couple of schools of thought. Were they the previous chancellors of Oxford University prior to Gilbert Sheldon, or they the protectors of the School of Divinity? But take your pick. I quite like the protectors of the School of Divinity, the 14 Mysteries. Anyway, just before we head off into the broad, another little story for you guys, and particularly the Harry Potter fans amongst you. Now, I'm no expert here, but I'm assuming that most of you know the beginnings of it, that Harry Potter's parents were killed by he who shall not be named, I believe is how his expression. But Harry survives, but he's left with a rather horrific scar on his head, and it is said that this type of scar was giving J.K. Rowling a bit of a problem back at the beginning. She couldn't quite fathom it out, and I'll be honest here, I've never met the woman. If I do, I will actually ask her the question, because it is said that it's right outside here, the Sheldonian Theatre in Oxford, that the inspiration for that scar finally came to her. And she was walking around, she's walking around, and she just happens to look down to where we are standing this very day, and she sees this, Greg, can you point this right down here, the stonemason's mark outside the Sheldonian Theatre in Oxford. Was finally the ka-ching light bulb moment for J.K. Rowling. She says, that'll do me, so the lightning bolt. But it's actually a stonemason's mark, basically the guys who were laying out the flagstones here. The Sheldonians getting built, so hey, listen, if it ain't true, it's a good story anyway. Okay, so we're on the other side of the Sheldonian now. We're out here on the Broad Street, one of the main shopping streets of Oxford. More of that later, but a better view actually of the front view of the couple of the mysteries there. They're in fact actually recent reproductions from the 1970s, the original ones, just eroded over time. As I say, just panning across the other side of the Broad. In fact, this is quite interesting. Over here we've got Blackwell's, the kind of varsity bookshop, and actually number 48 there, that little blue doorway was the original bookstore itself. I mean, they've expanded massively now. They're all over town and almost departmentalised. For example, you've got Blackwell's music, further up, you've got Blackwell's arts and stuff like that. So this is on the Broad. Now, back to the pubs. Good idea. Over there, again, another classic, another famous one, the White Horse here on Broad Street. We had a long time ago a great classic British TV series called Inspector Morse. He was a beer-swilling, opera-loving police detective, and if you remember that, and the follow-on Inspector Lewis, this is one of Morse's favourite pubs. If you do go in there, it's all kind of a Morse themed. It's a lovely pub and some great beer in there. In fact, over here, this building here, recently refurbished actually, but that was what they used for the actual police station for Inspector Morse. He used to drive around in a classic 1950s red Jaguar motor car. So that's Blackwell's on the Broad. Okay, so a little further up the Broad Street now. We're at the side entrance of the fourth oldest college here at Oxford, which is Exeter College, founded around about 1315 by the bishops of Exeter for students from the fine city in the southwest of England to come up here to study. So a lot of these colleges traditionally founded by churches and bishops and the like, but fine 17th century doors here. A couple of crests again. These represent the crests of the two founders or finances, William Stapleton and Sir William Petre, the two crests there. This is the more traditional one that people associate with Exeter, but if I just get Greg to maybe just pan the camera right above my head. A lot of people don't notice that, but right above there you've actually got the two crests merged together in the stonework there with the flying buttress angel sort of thing there, and it's the Stapleton and Petre, the original founders, famous people associated with Exeter. In fact, well, Tolkien was here as well as at Pembroke, and Martin Amis, writer, Sir Alan Bennett, playwright, and Tariq Ali, who I think was Saddam's right hand man. I think it was Chemical Ali, but Tariq Ali, he was here. So that's Exeter. So right in the middle of the Broad now, and fine view down towards the Clarendon buildings. But I wanted to introduce you to one of Oxford's most famous, or probably infamous, monuments. Just get the pan up the new accommodation block at Exeter College, you'll get a fine view of the spire of the chapel at Exeter College. But if we come to the end here, you'll see this statue of au naturel, I think you put it. Now, it was a gift. Now, in this country, we've got a very famous sculptor man called Anthony Gormley. Always uses the human form, but his model is actually Mr. Gormley himself. So there he is, ladies, in all his finery, au naturel. Quite often you'll come by here and students have clambered out on the roof and have dressed him up. But sometimes you come here at Christmas, he's dressed as Santa, or last night it was Burns night, he was wearing a kilt and that sort of stuff. But back to his natural state. So the Gormley monument here at Exeter College, Oxford. Okay, and so we're now outside Jesus College, 14th century, founded by the Bishop of Wales for Welsh-speaking students, and still very strong associations with Wales to this very day. Now, if you look at the crests above the doorway, to the right-hand side, the green background and the three white stags is the crest of Jesus College itself. Now, if we look to the left-hand side, you're going to see another royal crest. Kind of gives us a clue about the age as well. So you've got the three lines of England, top right, bottom left, and then top left, bottom right, you've got the fleur-de-lis of France. So dating back to the power dispute between England and France. And finally, the Welsh link, you'll see immediately above the door, the three white feathers, the Welsh crown, and the Germanic title, Ich dien, I serve. That is the emblem to this very day of the Princes of Wales. That's been the case since 1346. Okay, so we've found ourselves on Market Street, which seems somewhat appropriate because in fact we're here at the famous Oxford covered market, established in 1774 because it says so on the flag, right? But it just shows that Oxford is a thriving community. It's not just about the university. This is where Oxonians, I beg your pardon, actually go and shop. In fact, we're going to have a little look-see next. It's great. Before we do, again, FYI for your information, we've got free, again, free's good, right? Public restrooms, they're pretty good, pretty clean. All right, let's be careful crossing the road. So let's go and have a little look-see inside Oxford Covered Market. Then we go, several entrances all around the square. There's access by the High Street as well. So in we go. Look, it's great, isn't it? It really is cool. So up here, the left-hand side, some classic English footwear clothing, C.H. Brown's and Son, Master Saddler, all leather goods, barber goods, as you can see. So we go, but nice and quiet today. That's okay. So we're coming to just do a little loop around, nothing too. There we got fella, son and daughter, traditional organic butchers. Another butchers here, John Lindsay and Son. Fantastic. Great, isn't it? Look at that, hams, bacons, poultry, eggs, fine meats there. Lovely display here on the right. Fruit and veg. There you go. Fantastic. Real market. And of course, the fish counter, Tuesday specials, whole sea bass, trout, sea bream. Well, fantastic. A little route there. Another boot store. Get your candies and sweets there. Another fruit store. Just do a little loop around here. More fruit and veg. Fantastic. What's he got here? Oh, look at that dried mushrooms up there, Greg. Look at that. Fantastic. There we go. This is where you come and buy your fruit and veg, ladies and gentlemen. No question about that. So I'm finishing off, of course, the Oxford Cheese Company. Fantastic array of cheeses there. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Actually get a bottle of vino as well, isn't it? Cheese and wine, very civilised. And there you go, folks. That's the Oxford Covered Market, dated from 1774. It's real. So closing in towards the end of the tour now, finishing off here on the Broad, Oxford's oldest street. Just to remind you, if you are walking about, don't do what I'm doing, standing in the middle of the road. Just to repeat that, you can see quite clearly the mode of transport is the bicycle. It's fairly quiet today because obviously not the main body of the University are back just yet, but even so, please, when you're walking about, be very, 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 very careful. The bikes are everywhere and they don't care. All right, we've got a real treat here, guys. It's a bit of a rarity. We've actually got inside Balliol's inner quad. This is a really evocative, special piece for me to show you. We've been talking about the Oxford Martyrs. The story is the fact that the execution fires out on the Broad. The flames are so fierce that the original doors on the outside were so badly damaged they had to be replaced. And there's a living memorial to those awful events of 1555 and 1556. This here to this very day. So I actually just wanted to show you this as we come on through here. Both doors, quite a poignant memorial to the Oxford Martyrs. They're the original doors that were so badly damaged in the fires of the faith. Right here, have a look at that right there. So we're actually inside Balliol, which is a little bit quiet here. You see silence at all times, but I'm going to whisper a little bit. But Balliol is said to be one of the three original colleges. They all vie for who is actually the oldest. Is it Balliol, is it Merton, or is it University? But they're very poignant, permanent memorial, the original front doors. Alright, so we've now stepped back outside Balliol, back into the Broad alongside here, and I wanted to show you guys this actually. There's a little memorial to the three martyrs that commemorates, and this is actually where those doors would have been, really badly damaged. And you've got Hugh Latimer, Bishop of Worcester. Now the reason he was executed is because he was the chaplain to Mary Tudor's predecessor, King Edward VI, as a called, who was fanatically Protestant. Nicholas Ridley, Bishop of London, the reason he was focused is because he really championed the cause for the 9-day Queen, Lady Jane Grey. didn't go down at all well with Mary Tudor, I can tell you that much for sure. And of course the man himself, Thomas Cranmer, Archbishop of Canterbury, the top man himself. Well, the reason he got it, not only because he's the top fella, but essentially the main reason being he was the guy that actually put together the whole annulment of Henry's marriage to Catherine of Aragon. So that's where the doors would have been. There's the monument. But I really wanted to show you this is right here, quite poignant again. Bit careful, his bicycle's flying all over the place, but just bringing the attention to this just fairly simple cross and tiles in the middle of the Broad here, but that actually marks the exact spot of the execution. Cranmer, Ridley and Latimer in 1555 and 1556, the Oxford Martyrs. Alright, so we're back at the Martyrs Memorial here on St Giles. Now I wanted to share this one with you. Nice bit of urban legend. Now, get a shot of the Martyrs there. Some people say that it's actually the spire of a sunken church, and you can actually visit the crypt of that sunken church by walking down these little steps here. If I just get Greg to pan around here, these steps here will take you to the crypt for no charge. All I will say is you might be in for a surprise, but they're free. Alright, so what could be better than a good old wind down after a hard day's sightseeing in the City of Dreaming Spires than a good old pint of foaming English ale in one of the many wonderful pubs and hostelries in Oxford, and particularly this one here, the very, very famous Turf Tavern. Classified themselves as an education in intoxication since 1381. Trick is, could you actually find it? I'll give you one clue. New College Lane. Cheers. Okay, so that's the end of the tour. Our way, the Tour Guide's Travel Guide way. Hope you enjoyed it, or more importantly, hope you found it useful. Look, as in every large city, there's a lot more to Oxford. However, we feel that we've given you a comprehensive insight to what we consider to be the most important and interesting sites here in this remarkable university city of Dreaming Spires, this seat of learning and illumination that is Oxford. Thanks very much. I've been Rich Jones, the Tour Guide's Travel Guide.